This episode of the What's Happening Delco podcast is brought to you by Delco Meets for Business. Check us out on Meetup, register, and attend one of our fantastic networking meetings, which we meet on the first and third Thursday at the Brick House in Ridley Park, and the second and fourth Thursday at the Upper Crust in Newtown Square. We look forward to seeing you there. This episode of Fermented Adventure the Podcast is sponsored by Brewskits, handcrafted dog treats made from spent beer grains, oats, barley, and rye. No chemical preservatives, a great source of fiber, and packed with protein. Visit brewskits.com to see the full selection of treats for your dog and your cat. Receive 15% off, no minimum purchase on your first order by typing in lowercase FA 2024 at checkout. Cheers! Hello, ladies and gentlemen, craft spirit enthusiasts, and those interested in the intoxicating world of craft distilleries, cideries, meaderies, wineries, and the occasional foray into breweries. It's Rich Shane, and welcome to Fermented Adventure, the podcast, where we bring you the fascinating people that are making the mash, fermenting, distilling, bottling, pouring, and delivering to you some of the finest libations in the world. Before we get started, here are a few housekeeping items. Thank you for bringing the podcast into wherever you are and whatever you're doing. We truly are grateful that you have chosen to listen and make us part of your day. It would mean the world to us if you left a 5-star review. This helps us climb in the rankings, and it makes it easier for others to find us. Don't hesitate to leave us your comments as well. If the podcast didn't meet your expectations, tell us why. We're always striving to improve. You can find us at fermentedadventure.com. We are on Instagram and Facebook as Fermented Adventure. Email us at fermentedadventure@gmail.com. All right, FA Nation, let's meet our guests. He's Dave Broderick. I'm Rich Shane. Dawn Ranieri's here, and this is Fermented Adventure, the podcast. Dave, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Well, I'm excited. You brought samples of Dave's Concoctions.
Yes.
What are Dave's Concoctions?
Dave's Concoctions are basically drink mixers that you can have as either a mocktail, so add sparkling water or water to make it a beautiful mocktail, or it can be a cocktail. So a lot of my concoctions go well with different liquors as well. And the concept is 2 pours and you're done. So you're going to have a beautifully balanced cocktail without a lot of effort.
How did all that get started for you?
There's a long journey to this one. I was an IT consultant for almost 30 years. And then all of a sudden found myself out of a job. And the next day I woke up going, okay, I can either feel sorry for myself or let's do something different. So I decided to found a charity and a project management firm at the same time. My concept is I always want to give back in any way that I can. And the charity is about doing cocktail dinners for other local charities. So as I started doing both of those, one of my projects was actually with Ronald McDonald House. And we had just won Super Bowl 52 for you Eagles fans. And they were having a challenge to put ketchup on vanilla ice cream for Doug Peterson's favorite ice cream, or donate $52 to Ronald McDonald House. And this is in Philadelphia. So I'm having lunch with some of the business development guys, and they knew I was playing around with cocktails, and they said, you should make a cocktail for this. So I'm thinking, ketchup, we're going to make a Bloody Mary, but I'm a bourbon guy, so I thought I would make a Bloody Mary for bourbon that I like. The long story short, after 7 or different things, I have an organic ketchup that I make my Bloody Marys out of. And the first Bloody Mary before I even had a business was called the Bourbon Bloody Mary, specifically for bourbon. And then a friend of mine had a restaurant, started buying it because he had regulars that just absolutely loved it. And he kept telling me, you got some great recipes. You should start a business. Well, of course, then COVID hit. And during COVID, it's like, well, now what do we do? And my son and daughter-in-law lived with us for a little while in the beginning of COVID because, it was only going to be 2 or 3 weeks. And she goes, well, since you can't hold any events for the charity and you wanted to do cocktail dinners, why don't you start a cocktail channel and make the cocktail so people, when we get out of COVID, will know who you are and what you're going to make. And she goes, and I've got the name for you, Boozing with Boomers. So here we are during COVID. I got nothing better to do. I can do project management remote, which was also nice. But hey, I learned how to set up a YouTube channel. I film it on an old phone of mine that is a great film. It's a Samsung. And I started teaching myself to be a bartender and how to make classic cocktails, and eventually even made some of my own. So all of this kind of got us moving forward as we're coming out of COVID. The restaurant started buying the bourbon Bloody Mary again and kept repeating, you should start a business. So I said, I'll think about it. And I just delayed it because we're still coming out of COVID. I wasn't sure what to do. And then I woke up on Ground Hog Day in 2022. And I said, isn't this the day you're not supposed to do the same thing over and over again? So by the end of the day, I founded Dave's Concoctions, got the paperwork into the state, and was ready to move forward. But I had never worked in a food business before. And luckily, I have a friend that has a commercial kitchen. And I went to her going, now what do I do? She goes, oh, well, you need to meet with the state of Pennsylvania agriculture. So within a month, he met with me at her kitchen and said, do you have a recipe? Do you have a process? Validated that I knew what I was doing. Because as an old IT guy, project management and process management is kind of one of my strengths.
Right.
And he goes, okay, here's your wholesale license, go. And then I'm like, well, now what do I do? And it just so happens the Westchester Co-op was looking for a drink mix. At the time, I happened to walk in to see how they're doing. And they put in my first order before all my recipes were done. And I was like, well, now what do I do? Because I had no bottles yet. I had no labels yet. And the advice I got from certain people is don't overthink it. You have an order, fill the order, and you can modify as you go along. So I started with mason jars and paper labels that rubbed off in your hands, which people said looked antique after a while. But it was when I started going to the markets and talking to people directly that I realized, hey, I've got some really good recipes. So I have friends that say they're good recipes. It's nice when strangers walk up to you and go, no, this is really good. How much does it cost? Can I buy one? And that's when I realized, hey, this could be a business. So I did project management in this for a while. And then by the end of first quarter 23, good feedback because we had the proof of recipe in the first year. Like, is there a market for this? Yes, there is a market for this. So come 23, I said, you know what? When I finish up this project, why don't we see if we can turn this into a real business? So made some small modifications in labels that don't rub off. Got better bottles, these stout bottles that are easier to pour. And now I'm kind of sitting here going, what do we do now? But all of it kind of worked together of my, I think, thanks to some old bartenders, learning what makes a balanced cocktail, what makes a balanced drink, something that is refreshing, but something that's interesting. And that's where my juice mixes, I throw herbs in there as well, because it gives it these layers of flavors that add an interesting dimension to a drink.
Brewskits, beer, grain, dog bones, brewskits. Your dog will go wild. Brewskits, beer, grain, dog bones, a healthy alternative for your pup.
Brewskits are all natural and made in the USA. Visit brewskit.com. That's BREWSCUIT.com.
All this conversation just has me thinking about how this is not just a conversation we're going to have about Dave's Concoctions and your non-alcoholic drink mixes that could be cocktails, but also that your business sense, your project management, creating a business from just the basement, not even the ground floor, but the basement, and bringing this about, because I'm sure a lot of listeners who are of our podcast think to themselves, I'd like to start a business someday, or I'd like to start a distillery, cidery, meadery, winery, what have you. And what you've done just in a few minutes is laid out the blueprint. Now, different from their state, but laid out the blueprint. If they have all these ideas, and as you said, your friends are out there saying, hey, Dave, this is pretty good. You should make a business out of this. So this is going to be more of a conversation than just Dave's Concoctions. And I appreciate that, because I think for a lot of people, this becomes fascinating. This tells the story behind really the impetus of this, but gives more of people of an idea who you are.
No, thanks. And it's what's interesting too. It does, somebody the other day was like, but there's a difference between you have an idea to get started and you get started. And it does go back to the impetus of I have to always be doing something. And I had run small businesses before within a business. So it's more about the logic of, and the way I explain it to my wife, because she's an important part of this equation, is it's not a high capital business, right? So I don't have to invest $1 million to see if this works. It's a lot of labor. It's a labor of love for sure. But I buy as I go, if you think about it, right? I'm making product, but I'm buying and I'm making. And it was a thought of, how do I organize a business so I know it can make money? To your point about the business strategy, I have spreadsheets at the wazoo. So I'm an old school guy that knows Excel spreadsheet and can make it do things that it's not supposed to. But the concept was, I've got to understand my costs. I've got to understand how long it takes me to make it because I'm in a commercial kitchen. I was lucky enough to work with a woman, the commercial kitchen, who said, you know what? I know you can't afford monthly rent. I'll rent it to you by the hour. So literally I check in with her and say, hey, can I come in Wednesday afternoon? And we coordinate our schedule so that I don't walk into her kitchen when she's fully going. But at the same time, these same people kind of inspire me because they're asking me questions. They're giving me suggestions. They're looking for ways to help another small business. So even when I started getting into a couple retail stores, one of which is in Glen Mills, a place called the Meat House, so have you thought about this? Have you thought about, hey, would you like to come here and give samples to my customers, which is different than a farmer's market? So every time I talk about what I'm doing, the energy I get from people, whether they're tasting it or they're curious about my business, gives me the energy to go further. And then most of these same people just give me little suggestions, whether they're involved in this type of business or not, going, have you thought of? And to me, that's why I love doing this is all new to me. I was not in the food industry, but I'm curious. I like to learn. And I love people. So the energy I get from people, and the other thing, and I can't remember this quote, but it's like, if I tell you I'm going to do something, that holds me more accountable.
Absolutely. So
when I'm working with different people and like, you know what? I'm going to do something about that. I now know I have to do it. I can't just go, I'm too tired. But this is fun. I'm probably working harder than I have in a long time. And my wife was like, yeah, but you're having too much fun. And I go, yeah, isn't that great? Because then it doesn't seem like a job to me.
Right. Not only does it hold you accountable, but you continue to speak it into existence. You remind your brain, I've got a goal. I've got a place I'm going. And yeah, I've told people, but the brain is now wiring itself to hear from those clues, hear for those things that people are saying or the feedback you're getting. Yeah. Now, you had mentioned about you were making a Bloody Mary for bourbon.
Right.
Where does all the spirits side of you start? Where does that curiosity and enjoyment of spirits? How far do we go back there?
Now that's a great question because I wasn't a bourbon guy. I now am a big bourbon guy, but I wasn't, and I was more of a wine guy. And this is probably going back 2018-ish time frame, so I wasn't big into cocktails then. And I went to a bar, got a glass of wine, and you're spending $16, $17 to a nice glass of wine, and it's turned. Now, this has happened several times in the past month or so, and I finally got tired of it because either they would argue with me or I'm like, this just blew my experience. So I decided to order a Manhattan. My in-laws loved Manhattans, made great Manhattans. I'd never made a Manhattan. So the server said, oh, so what whiskey would you like with that? I looked at her and go, actually, I don't know. I've never ordered a Manhattan at a bar before. She goes, it was like 6 o'clock, so it wasn't that crowded. She goes, I'll go talk to the bartender. Bartender walks over with a bottle of whiskey in his hand, Templeton whiskey, poured me a shot and said, do you like this? I go, yeah, this is nice. He goes, I will make your Manhattan with that. His name is Bryce, and we became immediate friends because anytime I walked into the bar, because he knew I was just learning, he said, I got another cocktail for you. I have another cocktail for you. And he would never tell me the ingredients until after I tried it. And if I liked it, he said, oh, here's what it is. And over several months, eventually he brought in his cocktail book called PDT Cocktails. It's from a speakeasy in New York and said, you want to learn how to make cocktails? This is the book. And what I liked about the book is it wasn't just a bunch of great cocktails. The guy in New York, all his friends across the country would send him recipes and a little backstory to why this is what they serve at their bar. That actually spurred me when COVID hit, when I did the cocktail channel. I want to tell stories. I want to tell people, where did the whiskey sour start? That was my first episode. And I learned it actually started with the Royal Navy back in the 1870s. So to me, I want to make a connection of anything that I make to how did it get here? What is the history of it? How do I learn how to make it the right way? And everything has to do with fresh stuff. if you look at all the classic cocktails, they make everything from scratch. So I've taught myself how to do that, which then the more I got into that, which of course is before Dave's Concoctions, the more interested I got going. So that's how you make a balanced cocktail. And what I learned over time is if you go to any bar, you can have a good cocktail. But a great balanced cocktail is the drink you want to have a second one. I've had a lot of good drinks where I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'll go to wine now. But when they make it the right way and it is perfectly balanced, you never get tired of it. Your mouth doesn't get tired of it. And to me, that was the challenge during COVID. I want to learn how to do that because, well, one, I have more time than I usually have. And two, again, the challenge of figuring that out. But in all honesty, I didn't figure it out. I leaned on the best in the country who said, this is how I make this cocktail. Mm-hmm. So I ended up buying the exact ingredients they called for. Now, this is a book of a couple hundred pages. Let's just say everybody didn't use the same whiskey. Everybody didn't use the same vermouth. So if you look at my basement today, you will realize it's a little bit of I'm kind of a geek of the crafts. It's like I want to learn from the best. So I started buying all of that until my basement was full of whiskeys and ryes and vermouths and Amaros. I started to learn about Italian digestives, which just happened to like whiskey as well. So all of that came together of at least teaching myself or learning of, oh, so that's why you put these two together. Oh, that's what acid does to a drink. Oh, now I understand better what complements what. And by the way, I tried my own experiments and some were really, really hideous. So they never made it on the air.
Pardon the interruption. Thank you so much for listening to Fermented Adventure, the podcast. Could you do us a favor? Hit that follow button. It makes it easier for others to find us and it helps us climb in the rankings. Take a screenshot of the podcast, post it, tag us, and let everyone know that you listen to the Fermented Adventure podcast. Now, back to our podcast. It's a really interesting story to where COVID has birthed so many great things as it is the result of something that hasn't been so great.
Right.
But it gave you time to experiment, to breathe, to try. And then the next thing you know, you're figuring out bottles and labels and balances and you're producing a YouTube channel. In your head, did you ever have a sense that, all right, I'm just having fun with this? You got some feedback, but did you ever see yourself where you are today?
No. I had fun doing it and I had fun learning. So everything about it was, how do you do this the right way? And then do it and watch. Like if you look at my early episodes in Boozing with Boomers, even the color palette I changed to be something a little more professional. I didn't have a haircut in like 12 months or something. So I had COVID hair and a COVID beard. But I would lean into that. It's like, no, let's just enjoy the moment. The fun part was partly the learning. But here's what's great about YouTube. All my friends across the country could watch it and give me really, really serious feedback of whether they liked it or didn't. But I would spend the time. It's also amazing when you put together a 7-minute video. It's probably like putting together a podcast. The amount of energy it takes building up to it to be ready. And the amount of energy, I would take 3, 4, 5 takes because I wanted to do it in one take. The concept for me was it looked more natural for a video to come across clean, which also means the worst part is when I put in the wrong ingredients. I've done that. And it's like, okay, I can't do this one. One time, actually, I have... Don't take yourself too seriously because I just started doing promos for my wife to see one weekend about what I think it would be. And so I did this thing and it was great. And then I went to look for a cocktail glass at my bar. I had none. But I had a joke cocktail glass, a very large martini glass.
Okay.
And just for the fun, well, I'll fill this up and do it. Well, her reaction was, oh, no, that's what you keep because that sets you apart. So that was an accident, but that's what you will see in my thumbnails of me holding a big martini glass and every cocktail I make, except for maybe 1 or 2, that's my taster. So every cocktail I make one for you and one for me so I can make sure I did it properly.
And you get the big glass.
Of course.
Okay. I should have gotten you a bigger glass.
That's true. That's for the tastings, yeah. But again, it's everything about, the interesting part as I look back, there was no plan. the plan was, this seems interesting to me. So someone gives me a suggestion, and I went down the rabbit hole of, so how do you do it the right way? And simple as, you need a good lighting and you need a good microphone. Other than that, everything else is special effects. So I can learn how to do video editing as time goes on. So it was just get started and scripting things and at least having a storyboard in my head that said, I want to give you a history, but I want to teach you how to do it. And then with every episode, I'm learning different things. Between stirring and shaking, for example, why? And then how long? There was a competition in Chicago where literally the best bartenders in the country had a challenge on how long to shake a drink. And that was the taste test. It's 19 seconds. They did the same thing with stirring. It's 30 seconds.
Is there a song you're singing in your head that you know it's 19 seconds or 30 seconds?
It's very interesting you say that because it was, of course, COVID. And it's the ABC song. That's how long you're supposed to wash your hands.
Right.
The ABC song, and I'm going to get this backwards, so somebody look at my episode and let me know. I think the ABC song is 30 seconds. And the only reason I see that, I can envision myself shaking a drink, so it's 19 seconds to get through the ABC song. I have to slow it down when I'm shaking. But again, don't even know where that came to me, except somewhere when I was washing my hands, a clock was in my head going, this is about how long it takes me to make a cocktail. So I actually timed it. So this is the geek part of me. I actually timed how long it takes me to sing the song and what cadence and said, okay, so on film, I start singing, and I can't sing, but I start singing the song as we move to the next page, which shows you the recipe. And then I found out that was a perfect timing.
That's fascinating. So we're learning a lot today that you wash your hands to the ABC song. I thought it was Happy Birthday to You, but there are all kinds of variations to how you should be washing your hands and what you should be singing. But please, wash your hands. Now, you brought some concoctions.
Yes.
And you're the tour guide here. Now, you do shows, you do farmers markets, you do a lot of things where people get to enjoy these concoctions. Take us through as to how you introduce these.
So what's interesting is I have a pomegranate rosemary mix, and I have a cranberry blueberry thyme. In the fall, I make a honeyed apple cider, which to me is elevated apple cider, and people are still asking for it. So I know it's a good mix. And then I also have a Bloody Mary mix, and I have what is now called the pickled Bloody Mary, which is the original bourbon Bloody Mary. The fascinating part with that is the pickle juice company went out of business during COVID. So I had to then experiment with 5 or 6 more pickle juices to get it right again. But like a good experiment, I only had a pickle Bloody Mary when I started. Because I made a mistake while making a batch once, I forgot to put the pickle juice in and made a great regular Bloody Mary. And I've kept them both because they sell equally well. And the smartest thing I do at the farmer's market is to warn people, if you're interested in the bloody, that's great. But if you're interested in the juices, start with juices, because once you have a bloody, it covers your tongue. I've got horseradish.
The acids,
and the
high flavor profile.
And it will destroy the flavor of the juices, which are a little, especially the subtlety of some of the herbs that I have in here. And quite frankly, I want to sell products, so I want you to taste it the best possible way. So we will move from the pomegranate to the cranberry to either bloody.
I'm excited. And as you're speaking about this, I keep hearing obstacles that have come upon your life, mistakes that you have happened. And I keep saying to myself, I bet you're waiting for that next challenge or mistake or obstacle to show up, because each time it does, something great comes out of that for you.
It seems that way. But again, I'm a half full guy. So to me, a challenge is a challenge, not a problem. And it's always been that way with me. And I love solving problems as well. Now it's just a little more personal.
Okay.
Like this problem gets in the way of making money for the business. So, but at the same time, part of the fun I have is the experimentation of, here we go again. And I don't go, woe is me. It's much more of a, okay, this is a setback. This challenge is going to slow me down for a second. But I know what I want. So I know the flavor profile I'm looking for. It was fascinating how long it took me, though, to find what worked. Because the assumption, and a lot of people had this assumption, every pickle juice is the same. I said, actually, they're not. And what I found fascinating is even if it's a dill pickle juice, there's something a little bit, and it's usually the salinity of it.
It could be sour, though. It could be sweet. They could add a specific ingredient. It could be anything.
And that that was a surprise to me. Like in the beginning when I did this, actually, do you have a paper towel? I don't want to drip on your table.
Oh, drip on the table.
Okay.
Yeah, drip away. Have fun.
But yeah, so, and the reason the herbs got into this is my concept of a good cocktail is something that every time you take a sip, there's another layer of flavor coming through. So what's nice about the pomegranate rosemary is the simple one because it's pomegranate juice, 100% organic, I think it is. I'll look at my label later. A little bit of lime juice. And then I make a homemade rosemary syrup, which is a sweetener, but that's only because pure pomegranate juice is very tart.
I get the dryness, tartness on the nose, but that rosemary is just so beautiful on the nose.
Yeah.
Cheers. You know what I really enjoy right off the bat? So many different flavors are hitting my mouth. Mm-hmm. But many of the cocktail mixes we may try or come across, they're too sweet.
Yep.
And this has a nice viscosity. It's a clean, fresh mouthfeel.
Thank you.
Which means for me, I can do two things with this. This could be a cocktail, and I can add, let's say, a gin to this or a vodka, even a tequila. I may be able to make this fancy margarita something or other, right? But I can also sit here, and what we have had conversations about and more reoccurring conversations right now are those that would prefer a no ABV, low ABV mocktail. And when you go to a party, you don't feel left out. And this, I can confidently say, I'm going to serve a Dave's concoction and you're going to love this. And I can just know that they can stay with the party while other people are enjoying their alcoholic content, drinks and such.
Yeah.
So this is wonderful.
Yeah, thanks. No, that's the fun part about farmers markets and talking to people. And in the beginning, I had a lot of people walk away because they assumed it was a cocktail mix, even though I have a banner now, which I did in the beginning, that says mocktail and cocktail mixers. And she goes, oh, but my husband drinks. I said, what does he drink? And she goes, oh, he really likes gin. I go, then take the pomegranate rosemary, because the rosemary goes really well with gin. It goes well with tequila, it goes well with vodka. Oh, yes, and we do. The family and my extended family does sample test everything before this goes to market. But what's great about it is they can make a mocktail for themselves, a cocktail for friends. They're basically drinking the same base. What I call a flavor enhancer is different. And it could just be sparkling water. Some people put tonic in this. Some people, I think it was a lime sparkling. So they said, I like a little more lime flavor. Perfect. And that's the concept is 2 pours and you're done. It doesn't take a lot of effort. You're going to have this layered set of flavors, whether it's a mocktail or a cocktail.
You keep saying 2 pours and you're done. Why do I have to stop at 2 pours with this?
The concept of 2 pours is 1 pour from my bottle and 1 pour from your flavor enhancer.
Aha.
Oh, I want you to have 3 or 4 or 5 and come back and buy
I thought
bottles.
Dave said I can only have 2 glasses of this, and then I'm thinking, what other properties does this have that I'm only allowed to have 2?
Good point. No one's ever said that to me.
Okay.
So. But this is the fun part. From a marketing standpoint, we're trying to find ways to help people understand. I think this is really good, obviously, because I make it. And by the way, I still have anxiety attacks at every market before we start. Like, are people going to like it today? But it is trying to help people understand this isn't a sugary. Like, I've had even people come up going, I don't like sweet drinks. I go, I don't either.
Right.
The only sweetener I have in this is to take away that tartness and bring it balance, and to carry in the herbs.
I would say it's a 50-50 balance of alcohol to this concoction that people are going to, that's what you've discovered this as. If you stick with this 50-50, you're fine. Because that's a great point. Somebody's going to stop and say, how much alcohol am I supposed to add to this, Dave? And you make it easy. It's a 50-50 proposition.
It's actually not even a 50-50.
Oh, it's not?
It's a 2-to-1 mix.
Okay.
That's why he gets more out of a pint. So it is 2 parts mix to 1 part, I'm sorry, other way around. 2 part. Yes, 2-part mix, sorry. 2-part mix.
We haven't even had anything to drink yet.
I know.
So it's let's say we're doing 2 ounces of the concoction.
And 1 ounce
of whatever your spirit. All right.
And by the way, the juices also go really well with Prosecco. So what's fun about Prosecco is I'll sometimes bring a bottle to a party when there's a lot of people with a bottle or 2 of Prosecco. And then you top off everybody's Prosecco with this nice little sweet, it's almost like a Kir Royale. So you get this little bit of sweetness with a Prosecco, and it gets the party started.
All right. I'm just going to be part of your product development team now.
Okay.
Because I've already initiated something maybe you've never talked about, but maybe there's something else. Have you made ice cubes out of this?
No. And it's funny. A couple of people have said, but right now I'm in design phase. We're going to turn both, and this is new news, both the pomegranate rosemary and the cranberry blueberry thyme into sorbet.
Okay.
So the woman who I rent space at from the kitchen makes ice cream and sorbet. She just said this year, she's like, have you ever thought of trying to make these sorbets? Of course. What did I do? I went home, bought a book about how to make sorbet, figured out what I need to do, which is bring up, not to bore people, but you need the sugar content or bricks higher. Made a couple batches, taste tested with my wife, like, okay, this is really good. So we're still trying to figure out the labels and everything else, but that goes in line with, I never thought of putting them in ice cubes, but that's the perfect thing, because if you have the ice cubes and you're not diluting the drink, brilliant.
You just have the ability. You're taking notes, aren't you?
I'm taking notes.
No, but what you do is, if you're sipping a nice craft gin,
You're right.
and I may not want to make a full cocktail out of that,
Great idea.
but as that ice cube melts, you're sipping ice cube, and it's just allowing that essence of the pomegranate, that rosemary, to enter into that.
That's brilliant.
All right, we're trying that too.
So yes, this is the cranberry blueberry thyme.
You said something else, and when you go to a cocktail bar and you're having a cocktail, you have that first one, and if you like it, you'll order the second. And I always find that first cocktail, and I may go for maybe a classic, like you said, an old-fashioned, a Manhattan, a daiquiri, something with simple ingredients, not a lot. But if you can make that exceptionally well, I'll move on to the cocktail menu. I'll go for more because I have confidence in whoever is producing that cocktail that that's going to be a great cocktail.
Yes.
Same thing with that first one. I've satisfied my desire. I know what's going to be coming. I can't wait for the next one.
Yes.
So
that's to your point. You find once you learn more about how to make cocktails and cocktails, you're much more in tune with why you like something, and more importantly, which bartender made it the best. With Bryce that I talked about earlier, and actually Katrina after him, I would literally show up to the bar with my phone. I noticed they had the ingredients that I don't have in my bar. That's not going to happen again. And I would say, do you mind making this for me? So there's a drink called the Black Manhattan, and it uses a Verna Amaro, which is an Italian digestif, and rye. And it's 2 parts of Verna, or 2 parts of Verna to 1 part rye. The other way around. Nope, I'm right. Sorry. And I did it so many times at this one bar. My wife and I came in for dinner, and Katrina was the bartender and now managing the restaurant, walked over to us with a new menu and said, check out our cocktail menu. At the bottom of the cocktail menu was the Black Manhattan. And she goes, that's because of you, because every time I made you one, everybody in the bar wanted to know what it was and wanted to try it. So we decided now we have to put it on our menu. And those are the people you want to meet. So I use the word geek with me, which I mean it affectionately. I like to surround myself with people who are geeks of their craft. And when you talk to a bartender about going off menu, whether it's a classic cocktail or surprise me, and their eyes light up, those are the people you want to hang with, because they're just as interested in learning something new as you are. And those are the fun people to play with, because it's like, hey, I heard about this, or I'm learning this, or can you help me with this? And going back to Bryce, is like when someone shows up going, try this, I kept learning something new. And that's where I got hooked going, oh, I didn't know you could have this many different flavor profiles with the same base spirit, which shocked me, because I'm thinking all whiskey drinks are going to taste the same, except for if it's a sour.
all right, what are we enjoying here again?
So this is the cranberry blueberry thyme. It's 100% cranberry juice, 100% blueberry juice, and then a thyme syrup that I make.
Even on the nose, you get blueberry cranberry, but that thyme, it's a nice oily nose.
Very subtle too.
It's there though, but I love that.
Yeah. Well, cheers.
Well, cheers again. Now, I'm a big fan of cranberry, and I'm a big fan of blueberry, and I get that pucker. Mm-hmm. I love that cranberry pucker, but again, not overly sweet.
Right.
My mind is now trying to catalog or get an idea of that vodka. Even a shochu would be wonderful in this.
Interesting, yeah.
And just some different spirits, maybe some offbeat spirits that you might not think about just besides your vodka and your gin. I mean, I would even want to play with mezcal with this. and see how that smoky flavor
that's true.
would play with that.
Yeah, that's a good, again. And this, again, people have come back to me and explained other things. So it's like, whatever your flavor profile is, experiment. And eventually what I want to do is kind of get something out there that says, okay, these are the prime suspects as far as flavor enhancers. But if you like mezcal, the smoke goes well or doesn't go well. Because I also want to steer people toward things that I know will complement.
You talk about some of those aha moments, friends and family, you should open a business. What are some of those experiences or stories at some of the markets or when you introduce somebody new to this, or just a story or a couple stories you have?
Well, the biggest compliment I think I ever got, because Bloody Marys, there's a lot of people that Bloody Marys are just Bloody Marys. And so it's fun when a Bloody Mary person is interested in trying my Bloody Marys to see the reaction. And this one guy, it's funny, and I watched you as you're drinking as well. It's interesting to see how different people taste. There are people who pause, and I'm pouring these in, small cups, but they'll pause and they'll let it kind of sit on their tongue, and I can tell they're really thinking through all the different flavors. And I've had a chef say he's going to buy it because he's going to marinate his shrimp with it. But this one guy, and it felt like it took him 20 minutes, but it wasn't. He's tasting it, and I couldn't tell if he liked it. And then all of a sudden he just looked at me and he goes, "This is probably the most balanced Bloody Mary I've ever had in my life." And I looked at him, I said, "That is the biggest compliment you could give me, because my concept, no matter what I'm making, is I want it to be balanced where, one, all the stuff is playing well together, and if you take your time, you will taste everything in there. And Bloodies are the hardest one to do that with." So took that forward. And then other times, whatever it is, there's people like, "Oh, I'm not sure I like this," or "I'm worried it's too sweet." And I really want to have them film themselves, because sometimes the aha moment is their reaction to this the first time makes the whole thing worth it. Like, they almost get giddy on how good this is. And then they start talking about all their friends that have to come here, or they're going to buy. Like, one woman literally tasted it, loved it. I want to say it was November time frame. She asked me how long they're good for, and I gave her, "Oh, that's fine. It's okay, I'll take 6. And we're like, okay, that's a big compliment that she wanted to give him this gifts to everybody. And that's the energy that I get, is because before a market opens, you're never sure. But the people that take the time, I've had people now walking up going, I said, "Do you want a sample?" She said, "No. I already have this. I'll buy your other one." I said, "Well, do you want to sample that?" "No, trust you." And that's the other nice thing, is when people come back, like the cranberry blueberry time was an experiment. I brought a bottle of this to the market without bottles to sell, just to see if people liked it. 15 out of 15 people like, "So when can I buy it?" So literally, I made it that week, brought it to the market next week, and sold out. So I did the same thing with the apple cider. I do a honeyed apple cider. I said, "You know what? I'm going to trust myself. I think this is an elevated apple cider." First time I went to the market, sold out. And now people are asking for it. So I'm like, okay, I got something. I only have 5 mixes. I'm like the Orville, for people that know, I'm the Orville Redenbacher of drink mixes. I'm only going to do...
Well, you're about 45 years younger than Orville.
Yes, yes, I am. Which is why half the people are like, "Who?" Quick, Google them. But the concept is, whatever I put in a bottle, I want to make sure goes through what I feel makes it exceptional. And a lot of that is the balance. A lot of that is also shelf life. Like I'm toying with a coffee, cinnamon, herb mocktail. The problem with coffee is its pH is too high, so it's not going to last long. But I also haven't perfected the recipe yet. It's just not there. But it might be one of those items that I know it's just not going to last long enough that I have a special order. So if people want it, I might bring it to a market for tasting, but I'm not going to sell a bottle unless you do a special order, because it's only going to last 2 or 3 weeks. I could get it tested, which I do with all my products. But I've learned too much about coffee. It just fades too quickly, and then it allows bacteria in. So I'm like, okay, maybe this is not the right thing for me. But I was so excited to get started, because I made it on Boozing with Boomers. I do make a coffee cinnamon mocktail that is delicious. And you shake it up without ice, and it creates a froth.
Yeah, nice frothy,
so it's a
foamy on top.
nice fancy little mocktail. But
for me, what I find refreshing, besides the flavors here, is that now I can say, you know what? I got a party coming up. I'm going to pick up a couple of bottles of Dave's Concoctions, and I can just leave those out on the bar and then have people make their own cocktails versus having to have all the ingredients and taking time away from my guests. Now, that's something I enjoy, so we share that. I love making cocktails. Like, I'm walking around, here, can I try this? You know, maybe it was a mistake. I know. Did I do okay, Dawn? You know, I ask her. But that's, for me, that's the fun part.
Right.
But the other fun part is knowing that somebody's going to come back and say, what is this? This makes a great cocktail. Or I tried the blueberry pomegranate, and now I'm, blueberry cranberry, and now I'm going to go try the pomegranate. So it also gives them some diversity to what else you could put on the bar.
Right.
So this is great. I'm excited because you're talking about Bloody Marys, and I'm referencing vodka to see maybe which ones I want to add to play with. So which Bloody Mary should we start with next?
Let's start with a regular Bloody, because when we go to the pickled, maybe you grab a bottle of bourbon. But we'll start with a regular Bloody. So what's fun about the Bloody, I probably shouldn't admit this, but I was never a Bloody fan. So when the challenge happens, like, well, it's got to have a rich flavor. So I actually use organic ketchup as the base for this Bloody, and it does give it a richer profile, a little bit of sweetness and a little bit of heat. So I also like the fact that the heat, the sweet and the spice work really well together. That gives you, it's got the good mouthfeel, so it's a good thick thing, and everything we're drinking is the concentrate. So you're getting the full Monty in this case.
So when you say this is the concentrate, what should I be doing with this? Even if I want to do, let's say, a Bloody Mary mocktail, what would I do with this?
I would just add a little bit of water. I have people drinking this. So unlike the others that I think can be a little too tart, without watering it down a little bit with like sparkling water, the Bloody you can go straight, but it's a 3-to-1 mix. So the concept, I sell it by the quart, is 4.5 ounces of mix to 1.5 ounces of your favorite spirit. The Bloody works well with tequila for a Bloody Maria or vodka, and the pickled works well with vodka. Actually, someone said tequila, which I have not tried it, and then bourbon. But that was its purpose.
All right, you hit me right where I want to live. Because for me, I like a sweet Bloody Mary. It's got the sweetness there. Mm-hmm. It also has some tartness. There's that pickle juice that plays in there.
But pickle's not in this one. But
you've got something. All right.
It's a pickled horseradish.
Ah, there are pickles,
One of the best you could ever find. It's in Allentown, Pennsylvania.
All right, but there are pickles.
There's a pickled horseradish. So the only pickle that's in there is from the horseradish.
Right, but I'm getting that.
Yes, you're right.
But I get the earthiness of the horseradish, and it's not overly spicy. Mm-hmm. And one of the complaints, look, I know people like spice, but I think if you're going to offer a Bloody Mary mix, and this is just me, some of them make them so god-awfully hot that they're undrinkable.
Correct. Or they're only drinkable by a few people, because my first batch was a little hotter, and I realized I was turning too many people off, and you can add heat. Adding heat's easy. Right. So I actually had to doctor my first batch. I probably went through 3 or 4 weeks with feedback going, you know what? It's still too hot. And I brought it back. Not only do I think it's a better mix, because I think it's much more balanced now. As someone who didn't drink a lot of Bloodies, I was looking for a certain flavor profile, because everyone likes heat, but I like flavor. So by dialing it back a little bit, I think a lot of citrus in this. I have a neighbor who helps me make the Bloodies. This is a 2-person job for like 3 hours.
Oh yeah, he's or I say he.
It's
all right. It's a hard job to be a neighbor of you now, right?
Yeah, and I can't afford to pay anybody yet. We're not making money yet.
Okay. But the opportunity just to drink these is
But he likes bourbon.
Okay.
And I have a fairly vast bourbon collection and whiskey collection. So when we're done, we make 10 gallons at a time, 5 of each. And when we're done, we go back to my house and we share a few bourbons together. So that's how I keep them coming back.
Nice earthiness to this with the horseradish. And also, there is a little bit of a heat component. It's just a light tingle on the back of the mouth. Now, I wasn't sure how much horseradish this was going to have, so I picked up a bottle of vodka to try with this. And this is Hook and Flask vodka from our friends in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. I don't know if you've ever had them.
No.
And then I didn't know how much horseradish, but Jersey Spirits Distilling Company in North Jersey makes this horseradish flavor vodka.
Oh, that's interesting.
So I'm not sure which way to go. I think the first thing is I want to put a splash of vodka.
Yeah, just do the regular vodka.
And then I might want to do a double horseradish just to see which way it goes. Yeah. I don't know if you want to add or it's a work day for you.
I'll try the horseradish one.
All right, I may still try that one too. So
I'm just going to give myself a little more and you can have more if you need.
See, now, with this, I want to have that spirit component. Mm-hmm. So what that does by adding the vodka is it amplifies certain flavors to me, mm-hmm. and then it also brings about the vodka that I'm looking forward to. You know, is it wrong for me to say, or is it an idea that if you're having a Bloody Mary, you want to have the experience of the components of the Bloody Mary and the spirit you have. Yeah. You don't want it to be overly on either side.
Right. Correct.
All right. So I'm still curious as to how this is going to go. I added a little bit of the hook and flask, and now I'm going to add a little bit of the horseradish, and we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. I'm curious.
There we go. We'll give you that one.
Okay. Curiouser and curiouser. Oh, that's interesting. It's almost got a woody flavor to it.
Now, that's been around for a while. I can probably say this bottle is quite a number of years old, but that root part of the horseradish now comes through on the Bloody Mary.
Yeah, but it's almost like a barrel-aged vodka. Like I'm getting much earthier out of this tones.
But that pickle to me is still there.
Good. That's good. As long as you like pickles.
I love pickles. So we're good there.
Okay.
What's the future hold, Dave?
Well, it is, since this is a one-man show.
And plus the neighbor.
Production and plus the neighbor. That's true. But yeah, it is a labor-intensive show is probably the best way to explain it. So it's figuring out. And when I go anywhere for a tasting, whether it's at the 2 stores that I'm in today or at a farmer's market, people buy. Right? So it's been more than 1 for every 2 people buy. So when I do samples. And that's, to me, is the great feedback. And actually, I went to one market. It was literally everybody that sampled bought, which shocked me. But I can't be everywhere at all times, and I still want to play golf on the weekends too. So that's also something I've got to manage. But it's how do I get into more like specialty stores, looking at places around media in particular. There's a market right downtown. They like my products. It's just how to get it on the shelf, and then maybe dining under the stars in media. I think these would be perfect for, because you could bring your bottle of your favorite liquor and then mix them together. The sorbet is going to be an interesting thing, working with I Switch Gourmet, because that opens up a different audience of people. And then it's the hard part about what I make is it all has to be made and stored and sold refrigerated. That narrows my market. To be able to ship, then you're talking about cold ship. So that's one of the issues that I have today. I don't know how to wrestle with that, because to pasteurize would be the one step, but I don't want to be the thing on the shelf like everybody else. I do want to be the strong regional player of fresh ingredients. And by not pasteurizing that, because I learned by experimentation that when you pasteurize citrus, it gets sweeter. So I lose some of that acid, and that means I've got to change the entire recipe, but I'm losing some freshness that comes out of this citrus. The other thing it's coming around to, maybe by getting into the more stores and maybe doing events, but events are tough as well, just to keep working that angle of this is where social media comes in, and even the video channel of maybe teaching people more and more about cocktails, being a one-stop shop for sourcing. I've done virtual cocktail classes to raise money for charity. So it's and virtual wine classes as well. So it's how do I treat this business as bigger than what it is, to get a wider audience that understands what it is, and even look at shipping, because somebody explained to me okay, if someone's interested in your product, they actually even though shipping's expensive, that's not how they're pricing your product, and they might try it and realize it's worth the shipping. So I've got to figure that one out. And then there's one other thing that we're trying to figure out is like, without me, specialty stores are good, but caterers were the other thought I had. And I've talked to a couple, especially the Bloodies, because a lot of caterers do brunch where they just give you a boatload of stuff for brunch or for parties. And they usually don't have bartenders on staff. So my hope is maybe find a couple local caterers that they can add me as an add-on to whatever they're doing. And I've talked to one in media actually, and he's like, you might be a good add-on for our brunch menu. So hopefully that would be a great way to expand. And then it's just getting our name out there. So I'm just started selling in the media market this year. So I love the people that we've met. It's a fascinating group of people with a cross-section of interest. So what was interesting yesterday, is I had 3 different people who didn't want to drink, but for different reasons. So one person literally came in there going, yeah, I don't like sugary things. And I tried to explain it's not that sugary. And she stood there, though, and listened to my story. And then at the end of because then she said, well, how did you get started? I said, well, it's made in West. Oh, that's good. And so she basically listened to my entire story and said, well, then I have to try it. And then she tried it, and it was the cranberry blueberry. And she's like, all right, I'll buy it. So that's fun for me because I want to engage with them, especially if they're doubters, because you're right. There are things on the shelf. They cover everything up with sugar because that makes it makes everything else, makes bad ingredients or not natural ingredients to the background. But all you taste is the sugar. And to me, getting that direct feedback of what people like and don't like is, I think I'm in the right space. There's not a lot of sugar in here. As you pointed out, the tartness is still there, but we're also drinking the concentrate today. And it should be balanced when you add something to it, which is the goal. And the Bloodies it's a whole different world. It's funny at a market. There are people who, when I say, do you like Bloodies? They're like, no, so we hide the Bloody Mary while we're tasting the other things. But yes, that's part of where the feedback constantly is teaching me something. And constantly make me think differently, like today with me making notes on ice cubes. And I hope that when that stops, it's time for me to retire. But I don't see that stopping because somebody is always offering ideas from their perspective of what would make this better or different. And that's fun.
This kind of comes back to our conversation in the beginning about this being that business development understanding and building the brand and building the product. And you start to reach those stopgaps where you either grow or you say, all right, you bring out one of your Excel sheets and say, this is all we can do. This is our plateau.
Right.
Unless we do the next level. And what does the next level entail? Do we have to go with pasteurization? Do we have to go to some sort of shelf stable additive?
Right.
Do you want to start having to reformulate the flavor? Kind of like what happens when you're a craft distillery. You make some little small batches of bourbon.
Right.
Now you're bigger, like our friends at the Bard, and they're throwing up this 32-foot high column still. And now there's some efforts to be made to make sure you're keeping that same consistency of what you were making on a smaller still.
Right.
So I get it. And it's fun to watch. You're 3 years old, but you're still in your infancy, and you have all these dreams and ideas, and people come and plant new seeds for you, Dave.
Right.
And I've got more, but we'll talk about them off the air.
Okay.
Because I don't want to give all your ideas away.
That's right.
So we're going to talk Bloody Mary, but I want to change out our glasses.
Yeah, for the pickled.
Yeah. Okay, so if there was not pickle really in the last one, I can't wait to taste the pickle in this one.
And I'm not going to tell you anything about it until you.
Good, thank you.
Until you tell me, which is also part of the fun. I don't want to lead the witness here.
And what I picked up was a bottle of Weldon Mills. This is out of Weldon, North Carolina. And if you're driving down 95, they got a lot of billboards down there that give you the opportunity to stop in Weldon to check this out. But this is a bourbon, 94 proof, and bottle number 304, batch number 11. So we'll play with that in a little bit. All right, you're not going to tell me anything about this, right?
Tell you anything. So
All right, I know there's
cheers.
pickles. Yeah.
Cheers first.
Cheers.
That's important.
All right.
What.
Do you do a lot of that at the farmers market?
No.
No.
No. So the word cheers is now in my vocabulary. Though.
Right.
Like if I do emails or anything else, so I'm usually saying cheers to people.
Yeah, you're walking out of the Wawa. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers.
I do get the nose, the pickle there. There's also, again, one I really appreciate for me is the earthiness to it. I like something, this is craft. So sometimes Bloody Mary mixes, I'm drinking ketchup where they added horseradish and maybe some Worcestershire sauce to that, okay? So this is, again...
And that's one-dimensional.
Yeah, very one-dimensional.
The spices... So I taught myself how to cook during COVID. My wife is the cook. And I decided to work on proteins with different spice rubs. So I use different spices in a bloody that you would typically not get in anybody else's bloody, which is why I think you're getting that extra earthiness as well.
It's like a sweet and sour pickle.
But it's not.
All right. But it's not.
It's actually a jalapeno pickle juice, dill pickle juice.
Okay.
Which gives it a little extra spice, but not a lot. And I also put in a little apple cider vinegar, which gives it a little more of the tart, which is probably why it's getting that sweet and sour kind of.
Whatever it is, this to me is unlike any Bloody Mary I've had. The mix speaking to that. And going back to your point, I don't know if I'll be able to stop at 2. But it is a work day. So we'll see how that goes. There you go. Pour as much as you want in that. Now, what was the idea that you wanted to do something more bourbon, and that road it's like something a little different for you?
Mm-hmm. So, I guess I had started getting into bourbon at the time that I went to the challenge. So, getting back to, I want to do something different. I want to learn. I didn't want a classic Bloody Mary. So the concept was, while I was formulating, I think it took me between 38 and 42 recipes to get it right. And thanks to my neighbors and family, because I had a lot of tasters. Like literally I would show up on the deck with 4 samples and I would narrow that down and then I would play with that and play with that. And to me, bourbon offered a dimension to a Bloody Mary that vodka doesn't. So vodka adds, obviously, the spirit side of it, but a neutrality that I wanted to figure something out. So here's the funny part. I added pickle juice. I couldn't even tell you why, but when I told somebody later, and this is like a year later, I said, well, it's pickle juice and goes well with bourbon. And they're like, well, yeah, a pickleback. I'd never heard of a pickleback.
Oh, really? That's the first thing that came to my mind.
But somehow I wandered into the pickleback as part of this. And I just love, and I made it like Maker's Mark, or, I made sure it wasn't an expensive bourbon. Woodford's good in this too. I like it with this one as well. Right. So there's notes in a bourbon, the oakiness and sometimes a little bit of the sweetness, and depending on the char, it brings actually a little additional smoky that plays really well with the ingredients I already have in there. And it gives me an extra layer of flavor that isn't in a plain bloody. So I think that what got me there, back to the challenge again, you'll hear me say that a lot, was I want to do something different. I don't know what I mean by that. I don't know what I'm doing yet, but I'm just going to jump in and experiment. So even the fun I had when I was close to the recipe, I actually didn't like my original ketchup. So I said, the recipe's there, the ketchup is not. So I started rotating different ketchup. So then I started going, this is the right recipe, but it's 4 different ketchups. And that's how we narrowed down to an organic ketchup that blew the socks off of everybody else. And unfortunately, it is a ketchup that is never on sale. And I buy everything at retail, which is one big challenge I have, is everything I do is at retail. Because I'm a small operator. And yet, like the meat house is willing, he says, hey, if there's anything I buy that you use, I'll sell it to you at my cost. So I've got these people wanting to help me, wanting me to be successful and supporting the business. But, I have no idea how big I have to be. I've reached out to some distributors going, what's my minimum sale? Like, I'm willing to drive to your warehouse in Allentown to pick it up if I have to, because it seems like Allentown has a lot of distributors of food.
Okay.
I just learned that because one company I use, I said, would you sell to me wholesale? I said, no, but we've got these 2 distributors. Why don't you give them a call? And they both have warehouses in Allentown. So I'm like, okay, Allentown's a hub of food. But that's a hike. And the cost to drive up there probably makes it prohibitive, even if they gave me a little bit of a deal. So we'll see. But that's probably my next mountain to climb, is how do I figure that out? Because the process and how I do this is as tight as it can be from a time management standpoint. What's great about my neighbor, he was in retail. So when we walk into that kitchen, he knows time is money. Once we set up, it's how quickly can we get out of here? Every once in a while, I'm the one that makes the mistake. I'll spill something on the floor and I'll clean that up. But most of the time, we're pretty tight. But he knows there's bourbon on the way, so that helps.
I don't know why I've never had a bourbon Bloody Mary.
They don't exist. I've done research.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to access my experiences or trying to think of any cocktail menus or just some brunches. And yeah, I don't think anyone's, even when we were in Kentucky, I don't think I've ever had, maybe we just kind of in passing.
Yeah.
But if it was, it wasn't as good as this.
Well, appreciate that.
So you're sharing the story about how you're sourcing your ingredients, and I'm sipping. And I get something new out of that. And what I find with the bourbon, you get the sweetness of the corn. There's a spiciness now that's different than the horseradish. Mm-hmm. And you get the oakiness that I would never have thought to bring into a tomato component. And I really like it. I like that woody component, that oakiness to it. Plus the other thing that this is bringing in, some vanillins and other flavor profiles you're going to get from a bourbon. And I'm just sipping this. And it's almost like that idea that umami. I can't think of the flavor.
Right.
But there's something there. I'm not sure. It just keeps coming back. And thank you for this gift.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I'm really, look, I know this goes very well with your tequila. If you want to make a Bloody Maria, it's going to go great if you want to float some mezcal on there. Mm-hmm. I'm now thinking, well, what about, an aged rum? I don't know. Now I'm just going to go off anywhere and try something. But this is fun. And through your creativity and hard work, I appreciate that. So thank you for that.
Oh, good. No, and I appreciate the compliment because it's you do it because you enjoy doing it, but it is very rewarding when you get the feedback going, no, this is a good recipe, which goes all the way back to a couple people going, hey, you've got some good recipes. Well, maybe try to put this into a business. So, and that's how we got here. And then it's like, okay, where do we go from here? And I'll figure everything out, but it's the most fun I have is talking to people. So I know I can't grow go to $1 million business if I'm going to farmers markets.
Right.
But I want everyone to know when you go to a farmer's market, whether it's me or someone else, we crave the feedback because it helps us understand how is our product being received? What is it you like and don't like? Like I have some people go, I don't like pickles. I said, then this isn't for you. But do you like cranberry juice?
Wait till you try the pickled cranberry juice.
That's right. But it is. It's the surprise, because you asked me the question earlier, the surprise of where we are today, there's no way could I have charted this. I've probably broken every rule in marketing strategy or in business strategy, which is start with a strategy in mind. I didn't. I started with an idea in mind and said, let's just see where it goes. And in my entire career, I jumped into a lot of things not knowing where the end state was going to be. But that's part of the more fun, because once you finally design, here's how you get from A to B, and it's these 12 steps, then I'm done. I'm ready to move on. What's interesting about food or drink, I don't get tired of the fact that I figured this out. And I think it's partly because I do meet people who are drinking it for the first time. And there's something magical about that keeps it alive for me, that this is worth my time, my effort, which is why everyone always asks me, so what else are you working on? And it's harder than you think it is, because there's a couple different rules, and they're my rules and it's the rules of acid, that make it difficult to go much beyond this. But I keep looking. When I go to a grocery store, I'm walking aisles looking for ideas. I read more ingredients recipes. My ingredients recipe is about as tight as it is. Shocks people. Oh, what's in this? I go pick it up. Juice, and a syrup that I make. Oh, and lemon that I squeeze. Other than that, that's it. And that's why it comes across fresh. That's why I think it's exciting for people to try, because this is not on a store shelf and never will be. And which is also why there's maybe it's the ego in me. I don't want to be on a store shelf. I want to be recognized for this, not for being selling 1 million units. So
I can't wait to come back and talk to you 5 years from now when you are on the store shelves and you're selling 1 million units.
Right. And you'll be like, Dave.
But it's okay. Because I know today it's, look, your baby isn't driving yet.
Right.
Someday your baby may drive, and you have attitudes about how you're going to be as a parent, and then
It's true.
you kind of see everything's okay. They can venture out into the world, and they can come back, and it's all good. So I get it that right now you're controlling your craft, and you're making sure that every single person that comes up to you and samples that or buys that from you are going to get a great experience. And hopefully they tell 20 of their friends.
Correct.
To have that great experience. Dave, this has been a treat. And I am so grateful for your time. I'm grateful that you're a friend of Fermented Adventure. And we can't wait to see what happens with Dave's Concoctions over the next 5 years. But where can people find you? Right now you're in some farmers markets and a couple of shops locally.
Yeah, a couple of shops locally. So in Glen Mills, there's a store called the Meat House Market, great little meat market, but it also is a little specialty store. And he's got all my products on the shelves. In Unionville, which is a little hike away, there's a little store called Farmer & Co. It's a coffee shop market. Great. I also like working with great people, and they're both great owners that want to support a small business. So that's kind of what interests me in them. So I approach them. And then I'm in the Media Farmers Market first and third Sundays. I'm taking July off, but I'll be there and I'll be there actually on Father's Day. And then I'll be there through the rest of the year. And then you can go online. So as I start to build a presence in media, I am playing with the fact that if people order 2 bottles or more, I'll probably just, for a small delivery fee, I'll deliver to your door. But you could also pre-order for the market as well. So I'm trying to, as a small business, I'm trying to make the path to buying my product as easy as possible. So the fact that I come to media 2-3 times a month, there's no reason if you put an order and I can't say, okay, I'll be there next Thursday. Let's meet somewhere, and we could actually meet where the market is, which is Edgemont Street, right across from the ball fields. And I've done that. I've met people at Wawa parking lots. One was a police officer who didn't tell me he was a police officer until he bought it, which, you're sitting there in a thing carrying a bottle, and then this police car shows up and you're like, oh, am I not allowed to do this? But then he called my name out and I go, how does he know my name? But
you got caught up in a sting operation.
That's right. Your stuff is too good. We can't let this happen. But it is. It's as a small business, how do you get as much of your product into people's mouths and to your point, and then tell 10 friends? And that's how I'm going to grow the business. And so I have an Instagram page. And as a boomer, that's a challenge. But I'm trying to grow as many people on that page as possible. So that's going to be my primary source of information. But I also have a website, davesconcoctions.com. And you can see all my products. You can see my pricing. You can see a little bit about my history. You got a lot more today. And through that, you can send me emails and say, hey, Dave, I'm interested. And if you're having a party, I can give you a discount and I can make it by the gallon. So I can knock, each product is a little different as far as what my price is. But I guarantee you it'll be cheaper than buying 4 bottles, so you can buy it by the gallon.
Well, here's what I am excited for when you may get calls from throughout the country and they say, Dave, just send gallons and just tell us what the shipping is.
Right.
And then you can figure it out.
I will figure it out.
Thanks again so much. Look, if you want to find Dave in July, he'll be on the golf course, and then he'll be stocked up with his concoctions, and you can pick it up there.
Yes, but when I'm on the golf course, I will still deliver. So golf course is the weekends, but I can deliver during the week.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
All right. Thank you.
You're out and about, going to one of the markets, and you have a pizza craving? Where are you going?
Pica's. I love the Pica's upside down pizza, pepperoni. Probably one of the best. It's got to the point of spice. It's got just the right amount of spice that makes it interesting, but doesn't overpower the pie.
When you're making a delivery and you have a convenience store need, where are you going? Royal Farms or Wawa?
Wawa. I'm an old Wawa guy. I actually, in high school or college, worked in a Wawa as the night shift manager and learned all the ins and outs of what makes Wawa great. So yeah, I'm a Wawa guy.
You get to meet some Delconians when you're out at the farmer's market. How do you describe Delco to somebody who's never heard of Delco or has never been here?
So it's interesting. Probably when I was earlier, it's actually very eclectic. So you've got a group of people that have been here a long time and will even tell me the history of where they live and when they moved here. Then you've got people who come in later that they're starting to talk about why they like Delco. So I find it fascinating that actually people from Delco like to tell me their story too. So I think that's why I connect with people at media, because I'm there to teach them what my product is, but also to tell them my story. And a lot of people who come taste stuff stop and tell me their story and share stories. And to me, that makes it more of a community feel. And the people that work the market or manage the market, some of the nicest people I've worked with. So that's always fun to go out there.
You have friends or family members coming in from out of town and you want to give them or take them to that Delco experience. Where are you taking them or where are you sending them?
So it depends on what they're looking for. If you want like a great craft cocktail, I love to tell them to go to Brick and Brew right on State Street. I believe that's State Street.
Yeah.
But we're also, a lot of people in my family love Chinese food. And there's a place called Dim Sum Mania, also on State Street, that we've become regulars at now. They're not only we love their food, because they actually make a Shanghai pork bun. I did business in Shanghai once, and I fell in love with that. It's like a soup bun. But the people there are great, and they have these certain vegetables that are only available every once in a while. And the servers always tell us, "Oh, that's available today," and we always order the greens. It's like not a pea shoot. It's some bamboo shoot or pea shoot that they got to peel by hand. That takes a lot of time, which is why they can only make so much. But both those places are absolutely go-to places.
Great. You're sending the media, where a lot of people do end up going and taking people too. Dave, thanks again for your time today. And look, if you're out and about in media, go to the website and make sure that you look up Dave's Concoctions, find out where he's going to be or how he can deliver or ship to you. You're going to love him. You're going to fall in love with him. You're never going to make another cocktail again unless Dave makes it for you. Thanks, Dave.
All right. Thank you.
Hey, it's Rich. Thank you so much for being a listener to the What's Happening Delco podcast. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to learn more about the people and businesses in our community. I've been a real estate agent for over 25 years, working with first-time home buyers to last-time home sellers. As a listener of the podcast, my gift to you is a complimentary 1-year American Home Shield home warranty. This is for buyers and sellers that I help. If you're looking to move anywhere in the United States, I have you covered with an amazing network of real estate agents. I look forward to hearing from you. My direct line is 215-313-3777, or you can email me at rshaneremax@comcast.net. Oh, by the way, I am never too busy for any of your referrals.